Have you ever tried to build a commander deck and felt overwhelmed? That is because there are around 30,000 unique Magic cards. And that many options is like trying to figure out what to watch on Netflix. But what if you did not start with cards? What if you only had to pick a handful of roles you want cards to fulfill? Alright, so what are roles and how do I actually help you build decks? So we mentioned in the intro that building decks is hard because you have to pick 99 cards out of 30-ish thousand cards. And that can be a pretty daunting task for most people. So the idea of roles is that you find jobs that your deck is trying to do and you just start with the jobs that your deck is trying to do. So most commander decks try to do roughly the same jobs, or at least there's a lot of overlap, and this helps give us a good starting point. So things like lands, ramp, card draw, interaction, removal, finishers, stuff like that. So the idea is instead of looking at 30,000 cards and trying to pick 99, let's look at a handful of roles first, and that helps simplify our thought process. So we built a template to help you with this. So I'll show it up on the screen here. Basically what this is a deck building, a commander deck building template, and it gives you a starting point for every deck. And we have what we call core roles. So these are roughly the same in every deck. You should tweak these depending on your particular commander. But you have lands, you have ramp, you have card draw, spot removal, board wipes. Again, tweak these. A lot of players are going to do 10, 37, 10, 10, 10, 2, 3, 5. Again, it does depend on your commander. You can see here, just with these very standard or core roles, you're already at 72 cards. So it's like, you then look at your commander and pick the last 27. Stick with me, I'll run through an example on this template, and then hopefully you like it. If you do like it, you think it makes sense, and you want to try it, template's downloadable. It's free in the description below. Go ahead and download it. And if you like that process and you want to check out our app, please do. But you don't need to, no pressure. This is not about the app, this is about the idea. So let's start with a particular commander, because first thing you're ever going to do in commander is pick a commander, right? So our commander that we're going to do an example of today is Syr Vondam. So Syr Vondam is a human knight, 2/2 vigilance menace. And whenever another creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a 1/1 counter on it and gain a life. So what's the strategy going to be? What jobs do we need? Well, first of all, we have a 2-mana commander, so we don't need a lot of ramp. So we can kind of pull down on that. We're going to need a lot of creatures, obviously. We probably want a lot of small creatures that we're going to be sacking or flickering. So let's get right into the rolls. So 37 lands, good standard, boom, done. You may be asking why 37 lands. In this template, we built in a hypergeometric calculator. So if we expand column K, you'll see what this looks like. So column E is how many of this roll you'll have on turn 1, your first 8 cards, right? You draw 7 to start and you draw 1 on your first turn. So turn 1, you'll have roughly 3 lands. This is on average. By turn 4, you'll have 4 lands if you play 37. And by turn 7, your first 13 cards, you'll have almost 5 lands. So that is why I like 37. Columns H through J is the chance of at least one of these cards by turn 1, turn 4, turn 7, respectively. Not that important for this particular roll, but can be important later. So if you look at something like ramp, you have a 71% chance to hit ramp by turn 4. So it's good to look at the hypergeometric calculator to figure out how many of this roll am I going to have by this turn. So let's just leave the core here for now, and let's jump straight into my strategy for this particular commander. And as we said before, we want a lot of little creatures to sacrifice. So we need creatures to sack or exile to trigger our commander. And then we also want sack or exile effects. Again, we need to sack or exile our creatures to trigger our commander. So we're going to need a lot of creatures and we need a lot of sack outlets. So we obviously want more creatures than sack outlets because creatures do something without sack outlets or exile effects. But the inverse is not true. If I have a sack effect and I have no creatures, it doesn't do me any good. So let's start at 2010 and see what that looks like. So now we have our main core strategy, so to speak, and then you have our commander strategy. Down below it just says we have 102 cards in our deck, so we're over by 3. So I'm going to just dial back on ramp here. Frankly, with a 2-drop commander, you don't want to be playing a lot of ramp, in my opinion at least. I'm not going to play a mana rock on turn 2 when I can play my commander, like almost ever. So all the 2-mana mana rocks are kind of dead to this deck. Might want to play Soul Ring, but this is like, again, 2-mana, white-black, pip commander. Soul Ring's not that great. It's okay. So you might want to play Soul Ring. When I go to build this deck in the next video, I'll show you like most of the ramp I would go with is both ramp and a sacrifice effect. And that's kind of a key point I want to highlight here is like when you go to select cards doing this, try to find cards that fulfill more than one role. Like if you can find ramp that is a sacrifice effect, awesome. If you can find creatures that also sack or exile, awesome. And the better you find cards that overlap between roles, the more synergistic your deck will feel and the more fun it's going to be to play. So really the selection of roles is just a baseline to get you understanding, like, hey, these are the things I'm trying to do. And then when you go to select the actual cards to fill those roles, which again I'll do in the next video, it's not really science, but the art of it is to try to find cards that overlap multiple roles. And the better you can do that, the better the deck's going to perform. So the idea of roles and or jobs is not something new to Magic. It's not something novel that I made up. And what we're trying to do is make it so that you can look at a commander, you say, I want to build this commander deck, and within 10 minutes you'll have your roles laid out, and then within another 10, 15, 20 minutes you'll have the deck physically built in your hand from cards that you already own. So we're really trying to get away from the whole idea of net decking and going online and looking at lists and then buying a bunch of singles. What we're trying to achieve here is, here's a commander I want to build. Here's the first step to build it, this template. Next step to build it is take these roles, stick them in the app, or do a search for them, whether you use our app or not. You can use Scryfall or something. And then physically get those cards in your hand and your deck built within a half hour. So I think that's good for this video. Again, next video we're going to take a look at filling these roles with actual cards from my personal collection. I'm going to try to do that quite quickly. So I'm going to search the cards from my collection using the app, and I'm going to pull the cards using the app from my chaotic storage system, hopefully in about 10-20 minutes. So if you want the template, download it below. If you're interested in scanning or chaotic storage, we got videos on the channel for that. Go ahead and check them out. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this helpful. As always, trying to make the game easier to play.